Is there an age limit for the company? Sometimes older folks see everything about our apprenticeship and they assume that maybe the company's just for young people. And on the other end, we have young people who see our emphasis on professional writing and wonder if they'll really fit if they're just getting started with their writing work. So it's a really good question. Who is the company for? And is there an age limit? My name is Brad Paquette. This is the Company Podcast, and I'd love to answer that question. I think a good indicator of a healthy church is an intergenerational congregation. What I mean by that is that there's a good mix of people of all different ages. The old and the young need each other. This is something that we see in the Bible. The young bring energy and idealism. The old bring wisdom and experience. The young often bring new skills and important perspectives to reach the next generation, while the old often provide significant funding for the church and also have a lot more availability. A church dominated by young people may have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy, but may lack wisdom and the tempering of age. A church dominated by older people may struggle to take the ministry beyond the church walls. One of the things that I think is really cool about the membership here at the company is that we truly have an intergenerational membership. So you might be wondering, how old are the members of the company? And that's a great question. And the answer is that we have all ages. Now, that doesn't mean that all the ages participate equally in everything. There are some opportunities that tend to lend themselves more to one age group than another. So, our full time writing apprenticeship, for example, is absolutely open to everyone. And at some point, I'd love to see some older folks, maybe even retirees that are looking for a second mile ministry come and be a part of that. But so far, and what I foresee for the near future, is that we tend to attract college aged writers, people in the 18 to 25 range. Some of our apprentices apply straight out of high school and they are 18 years old. Tirza was even 17 when she came. Some are in their mid 20s. We have people that have completed a 4-year degree from a traditional college, and they've kind of checked that box and now they want to get serious about something that they're really interested in. So they come after 4-year college. But most of the people that come to the apprenticeship are truly young adults. They're still kind of figuring out what they want to do with their lives. They don't have long-standing careers or established households and things like that yet. And that makes sense. For obvious reasons, young adults, it's a little bit easier for them to move across the country from wherever they are to go to a school for 2 years. In the past year, we changed up the way we do ARC year, and we also introduced our live coaching groups, which have been really cool. And I'd love for you to check that out as well. But in these two groups, ARC year and the coaching groups, we really do see a lot of diversity in the ages of the participants. So people that feel they're too young for the apprenticeship, maybe they're still in high school, might find a home in ARC year with our coaching groups. And at the same time, people that, you have a career, you have a family, you can't just pick up and move across the country to go to a writing apprenticeship. We have a lot of people up to 75 years and older that take advantage of ARC year and take advantage of our coaching groups. So we see a huge range from teenagers to retirees in those groups. And we really do benefit from that old and young dynamic. Young people have a lot of energy, they have a lot of idealism. They're aware of trends, right? And what's going on in culture and even in the book industry to some degree. And older people have experience. I love in our groups, sometimes somebody will be writing about something and one of our older members will say, well, actually, I did that job for 20 years and here's a piece that you're missing of that. And they can provide that perspective. Beyond our classes and things, we also do book production services as part of our apprenticeship. So our apprentices, they're not just learning to write, but they also learn how to do various kinds of editing and book design and things like that. And the people that we work with those book production services are of all ages. We have young people, we have old people that are pursuing that, and that we have the privilege to help out. And that's really cool for our apprentices too, because then they get experience doing real world projects. It's not just some practice project that they'll throw away, but they get to work on a book, and that book moves forward and actually goes to the market. And now, forevermore, they can point people to Amazon or to Barnes and Noble and say, I worked on that book. And it's a real life example of something that they've done. And I really think that our group works for writers of different ages because we're very clear about our goal. What we have in common here is a desire to write and publish our best work for Jesus. A lot of writers groups really are social groups. And it's okay to admit that. And it's okay to have that group, right? I don't have any problem with that. But we have to be clear about what's happening there. And so when writers groups are fundamentally social groups, it makes sense that we're going to arrange ourselves demographically, right? That's how we hang out with people. You probably hang out with people that are of a similar age to you, have similar experience and circumstances as you, because it's easy to relate to each other and get along. And so if your primary purpose is just to hang out and get along, it'll be around people like you. And so that makes sense that a lot of writers groups, which have a social component as really what's driving them, it makes sense that over time they're going to become mostly for old people, or they're going to become mostly for teenagers, or some other kind of demographic quality is going to bind those people together. But we haven't seen that happen here, and it's because our primary purpose is not social. Now, don't get me wrong. I see friendships form every day. I've made so many friends among our members here. I love seeing our coaching groups come together. Like I truly, I find myself smiling. I find delight when people start popping up into the Zoom meeting for our coaching groups and things like that. So it's not like we're against friendship or we're against socializing. We certainly do those things, but the primary thing that binds us together is our desire to write and publish our best work for Jesus. That's what brings us together. And if you're interested in doing that, age is just a number. And as it turns out, God has called lots of different people of different ages and backgrounds and things to this mission to be writers, to put together amazing stories that glorify Him and draw people to Him. And so we're united around that rather than united around some, more or less arbitrary demographic information that makes us a social group. And of course, there are some challenges that we have to face being an intergenerational group. Beyond the social component, there are other reasons that a lot of writing clubs usually cater to some particular age group. And what I see a lot of, having been involved in writers groups for over 20 years now, I see that there are a lot of clubs, organizations that cater to retired age people. And there are a lot of clubs and organizations that cater to young people, like teenagers, maybe in college, but not much above that. And people in between those ages, basically between 25 and 50 years old, are kind of left out in the dark. And part of that is that we are the smallest group in this age. So I'm 41 right now, so I consider myself part of that group. But we kind of get left out in the dark because we're the smallest group. A lot of people who are young, like through college, have time to write. They still have that idealism that they're trying to make it as a career. And then people that are retired often have more time to pursue their hobbies and interests after they retire. And in between, a lot of people, you kind of end up just getting serious about life. And so it makes sense why that happens. But there are some of us out here. There are some of us between that as ages of 25 and 50 or so who, in the throes of raising kids and building careers and being really integral parts of our church communities and things like that, we are doing this writing thing. And a lot of times those are the people that kind of get left out in the cold. And regardless of all that, though, we seem to see that kind of differentiation of young groups and old groups, not a lot in between. But it is really, truly odd to see what we have here at the company, which is a writing organization where people of lots of different ages participate. We truly are an intergenerational writers group. So, I was talking about churches in the beginning and how I think that healthy churches have an intergenerational component to what they do. I think that's true. And at the company, we are not a church. However, we are part of the church. Just like a church, each age group, young and old and in between, brings something important to the group. Young people bring energy and idealism. Older folks bring that perspective, that we talked about a minute ago. They know real stuff about real things and they've had experiences. Older folks also understand that life is a long game, until it's suddenly not. And they bring that important perspective to young, energetic writers who want things to happen right now. And so we need those perspectives. Young people, you need some people in your life that are saying, like, yeah, keep working hard, but 1 or 2 years isn't as long as it sounds like, in the grand scheme of things. And older folks, you need young people in your life that are saying, like, come on, like, you can do this, work faster. These opportunities are real and you can make it happen. And so we need that balance and it's important. So within that intergenerational community that we have, the question I led with, is there an age limit for the company? And that's a question that we've received many times. People will email and say, sometimes they'll say, my kid is 15. Can they come to this group or this class or whatever? Sometimes older folks will say, oh, I can't do that contest or that challenge. That looks like it's for young people. And so we want to correct both of those things. Um, the answer is, no matter how old you are very welcome. It is true that like our spring writing challenge will probably be dominated by younger people. We do see a lot of teenagers and like college age people that like to do that kind of thing, and we kind of cater the graphics and the way we market that towards younger people. But that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to participate if you're over 50. And even though most of our content is kind of arranged for adults, right, we're kind of thinking about people who are ready to take this seriously, that are ready to say build a business around their writing. If you're a teenager, say you're still in high school and you're not ready to take those steps of like registering a business and things like that, that's okay. You still come to the course and you take the content that's helpful for you where you are right now, and you are very welcome. If you love Jesus and you want to take your writing seriously, this is a great place to be, and we want you here regardless of your age. So if you're not yet a member, I encourage you to jump over to writers.company/membership and become a member. Get more involved here. If you've been holding back because of your age, because you think I'm too young or too old, please jump in and again, take advantage of things as they make sense for you, where you are in your journey. You don't have to apply everything if it doesn't make sense for you because of your age, and that's just fine. No matter your age, I think you're going to find other people like yourself here. And you're going to benefit from being around other believers who aren't exactly like you, who aren't your same age, aren't your same circumstances. Within that, of course, we live in the real world. And we do, everybody who becomes a member of the company, in order to join, you have to check the box that says that you read and agreed to our statement of faith, which means that you're a Christian. So if you're not familiar with that, check that out on our website. But we have these 7 simple statements, things that like you believe that Jesus is God and that Jesus is the only source of your salvation, things like that that make you Christian. And so, the people in the company, all of the members, should all be believing Christians, and that's pretty cool. But again, we do live in the real world, and so we do have a couple of considerations for you if you are under 18. So, if you're not yet 18, here's what we ask you to consider as you get involved with things at the company. If you're under 18, you do need a permission from a parent to become a member of the company. So, you can fill out the form yourself, but please, you need to talk to a parent, even if it feels like a formality. Like, I get it. If you're 17, you're a senior in high school or something, and your parents are cool with this, great. But still, just run it by them before you check that box and sign up. Let's say you're over 14, and you have the maturity to engage with other adults. You are welcome to engage in all of our live meetings. And so if you're between 14 and 18, totally come. You're welcome to come and participate just like every other member of the company. But recognize that you are going to be stepping into adult spaces. All right. So you're going to be among people of various age levels and experiences. And just make sure that, you have the maturity and you understand like kind of what's expected of you in those spaces. But importantly, also, if you are between 14 and 18, talk to your parents about how they expect you to behave in those spaces. They might have some special instructions for you about how they want you to relate to people and things like that. Now, if you're under 14 years old, you are still welcome. But we do ask that you have a parent in the room with you whenever you attend any kind of live online meeting. So if you're under 14, you can become a member. You can watch the courses, like all the recorded stuff. You can do all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to come to some kind of live meeting where you get to interact with other people, we do want you to have a parent actually with you while you do that if you're under 14. Keep in mind that oftentimes our members will exchange information with each other. And there's lots of good reasons for that. We find critique partners. You might join somebody's book release team. You might agree to, review somebody's book, and they're going to send you a copy. All kinds of good reasons that people give each other personal contact information, emails, addresses, things like that. And we usually encourage that. There is also a social component to the group, even though that's not our primary purpose. You might meet somebody that seems pretty cool to you that you'd like to chat with over email or something, and that's perfectly fine. We want you to do that. We encourage you to do that. However, of course, if you're a minor, we need to be considerate of that. So please, if you're under 18, and again, I get if you're 17 and you're saying, man, this is such a drag, but if you're under 18, we have to insist, please talk to your parent before you give contact information to anyone every time. So if someone wants to trade info with you, you need to say, cool, give me a minute. And you go ask your parents and ask, hey, this person wants to trade info, wants our address for this purpose. Is that okay? Get their permission before you give that out. And if your parents say no, or if you just want to say no, if you don't like the vibe or you just don't want to do this, absolutely say no. And you can even say, "Hey, I'm actually under 18, and I would have to ask my parents about that, and that's just kind of a hassle. So I'm just going to say no." And that's perfectly fine. They will understand. And honestly, I mean this quite literally. If they don't seem to understand, if they push back on that at all, please tell me personally. You can send me an email. Just email us at info@writers.company. That'll get forwarded to me, and I will be right on that. I assure you, because that's important to us that, as a minor, you're protected in that way. So, those are a few considerations just to make sure that we're staying on the right side of things and that we're kind of being proactive about making sure that we do have healthy relationships in an intergenerational organization like this. I genuinely think it's so cool that we see a great diversity of ages here at the company. Of course, some activities will tend to skew towards one age or another. Some projects will just naturally be more interesting to one group or another, and that's perfectly fine. We're not trying to cater to this age or that age. We're not trying to make ages mix. We're just following the inspiration of the Lord and one project at a time. Our goal is to love God's writers and give you great resources and opportunities. Sometimes that's going to be for you, sometimes that's going to be for somebody else, and just hang out. When it's for you, awesome, take advantage of it. When it's for somebody else, cool, pray for them, bless them in that. And, as we put those projects and those opportunities out, whoever shows up, shows up. Whoever benefits, benefits. And again, if something's not for you, that's cool. That's cool. Just wait for the next thing and maybe it'll be a better fit for you. So whether you are 16 or 85, you are very welcome here. I sincerely appreciate everybody being respectful to one another. I really appreciate how we prioritize the safety of our younger participants. And that's something that all of us do together. And these are ways that we love each other well in Christian unity. It's a beautiful thing. And I truly feel so privileged to be a part of it. Thank you so much for listening today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and leave us a review. This podcast was produced by Theo Paquette with help from the company. For help with your podcast, visit writers.company. We'd love to give you a hand.